What's up, y'all? I am back for another video. Today, I am reviewing Days of Future Past, and then maybe later the reason I'm saying maybe. It just depends on how the night goes. I'm gonna try. I mean, I watched the movie just in case. If not, we'll review it Friday because I don't think I'm gonna be able to see Godzilla Friday. It's just looking like I'm not. So I most likely will definitely see it on the weekend, but it doesn't look like I'm seeing it Friday like I originally planned. But X-Men Days of Future Past, to me, this is my favorite one. I love X2, but I love the way they were able to mix the classic X-Men and, from the Fox movies and then the newer cast. And I always just in general have loved the Days of Future Past story from the comics. The only thing I wish we just had that shot of Wolverine, in like the suit and the Sentinels looking over him about to kill him. I wanted that shot in the movie, but whatever. Aside from that, I love this movie. I think it's a perfect film. I think to me, this is my ending to the Fox X-Men movies. Like Apocalypse and Phoenix they really didn't need to be made. This should have been it because the way this ends, even it feels like a finality. And like I said, I'm reviewing the Rogue cut, which isn't drastically different. It's a little longer. Rogue has a whole subplot, which in my opinion, I think is just a better movie. It flows better. And I love like the juxtaposition of you have older Magneto along with Iceman going into the mansion to try to get her out, while young Magneto is going to get his helmet. It's like those scenes where both of them are using their powers. It goes back. It's perfect. And the scene where Professor X meets his younger self is that's like one of my favorite scenes in a comic book film ever. It was so good. Because to me, they're both such good actors that it was just such a good back and forth. And I love the 70s. One of the few stories that I think really, I love the way it also explained time travel. They didn't overcomplicate it like fucking Endgame did. Like it actually was, they kept it consistent with its own rules. You were able to follow it. It wasn't convoluted. And I'm going to be honest, I love the final fight. I love the whole final sequence where Magneto's just lifting everything. We get to see Magneto be a badass. I love it. And then the Quicksilver scene, which, humble opinion, my friend Mara brought this up in a tweet. How the fuck does this look better than the scene in The Flash? And whatever, yeah, their powers are different, but if we're just talking just strictly the visuals, this movie's from 2014. So almost 10 years ago. Looks better than a movie that came out this year. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't fucking happen. Even this, because there's another Quicksilver scene in Apocalypse, which I will review. Part of me was like, I will just end it on here, but I'm like, no, I do kind of want to rip apart Dark Phoenix, so I think I'll still review the other two, but it's gonna be begrudgingly because they really didn't need to be made. Because to me, the way this ends, this feels like an ending. It has a finality feel to it, especially towards the end when everything gets restored, like get back to the normal. We see Jean and Cyclops alive again. It's like that to me is where the film ends. To me, that is the ending, and then Logan is the ending of Logan, specifically Wolverine's story. But to me, in terms of Fox X-Men, to me this is the canon ending. I think this is such a perfect place to end it. I love the score. The only real negative I really have, and it's not necessarily a negative against the movie, because I think the movie itself is, I'd almost say a 10. I'd give it like a 9.5 is kind of where I'm at. But I don't like the way the Sentinels from the future look. I'm not a fan of it. I get they were going for this more evolved look because they're taking a lot of, because the story goes that Mystique kills Trask, which causes a war, which causes humans to make the Sentinels, and they made them even more worse, and it leads to this dark future where mutants and humans who, like, basically support mutants or humans are about potentially could give birth to a mutant are basically killed. So it's like a dystopian future. And they have to go back in time and basically stop Raven from killing Trask. So that's pretty much the movie. And also, get Professor X and Magneto together, who Magneto in the 70s was in prison because I love how the way they were able to wedge JFK's death into it, because it would make sense why Magneto would have been able to do it. So I love that story. It's weaved in perfectly. I actually think in general I love the '70s setting. Um, and I'm gonna say it, Stryker's been perfectly casted 3 times in this franchise. Brian Cox, the dude from Origins Wolverine, even though the movie itself isn't great. And then this dude, yeah, he's probably the weakest of the three, but I like. To be fair, he's not the Stryker we know yet. He's just like a soldier at this point. He's not like the main guy yet. But the bit we do get of him, I do like him. So he's a decent. So they in this franchise have casted Stryker perfectly 3 times. But keep in mind, the same franchise, the fact that they're able to cast Professor X and Magneto twice, that is something that is I've never seen it. Probably I don't know if we'll ever see again. Even the fact that they were able to cast them perfectly twice within like 10 years is perfect. And I think the other reason I like the road cut, we get a lot more Ian McKellen Magneto. Because to be fair, it makes sense because a lot of it's going to be in the past, so we're not going to see. Also, Ian McKellen is probably up there in age. Same with Patrick Stewart. That's probably why they didn't really have him involved in the story. But going back to the Sentinels, I get what they were going for. So they're coming from Mystique, and they're supposed to be able to adapt to the mutants' powers, and that's why they're so strong. I get that's what they were going for. I didn't like the look. They look too futuristic to me. They reminded me of I think it was called the Annihilator, that robot from the first Thor. Just the look of the face is different, but it's similar. Even because the Sentinels from their face can shoot fire or some kind of beam out of their face. I preferred the Sentinels that we got in the past, the ones we actually get in the end of the movie. They actually somewhat look like the Sentinels from the comics. I'm not saying it needed to be a one-to-one from the comics, but I would have preferred a better look. I'm not a fan of the look they gave the Sentinels in this movie. I will say it again. I'm just not. But to be fair, we don't get a lot of scenes in the past anyway, or in the future anyway, so it's fine. The bulk of the movie is in the 70s. And I think this is the best of Anna Paquin's Rogue. I love that whole sequence where they break in to the mansion, they get her. Bobby unfortunately dies, and then they go back because she has to take Kitty's powers because Wolverine, when he sees Stryker, has all his memories basically go back. So for a second, he reverts back to 70s Wolverine, who doesn't obviously know what the X-Men is or doesn't know the Professor. So he almost loses his memory. But then she's able to stabilize, but unfortunately, her condition's getting worse because during the freak out, Wolverine's claws came out and she gets scratched pretty badly. So that's why Rogue had to come in and basically, because she could take her powers, people's power. I like that. I love the Rogue cut. To me, this is probably the only version I generally watch. Aside from that, it really plays out the same, minus I think you get a different credit scene, because I think the credit scene in the other one basically sets up Apocalypse, but I prefer the credit scene in this one. But anyway. Alright, y'all. 9.5 movie. Later, I'm going to try for later this evening to review The Prowler. And if not, then I'll for sure do it Friday. And then tomorrow we'll be doing the last Annabelle movie. We'll see. I don't think they will continue the trend. I really did like Creation, so we'll see if they continue it. We'll see. Anyway. Let's get to it. So the movie opens up, set in the past, in the future. Dystopian future, where we see the Sentinels killing off different mutants, while Professor X, has this opening monologue, which kind of sets the tone. I love the atmosphere and the cinematography of this movie. You would think this would be a movie that came out last year, even though it was from 2014. It doesn't feel like an old movie. It ages well in terms of CGI, in terms of cinema. Not just like as a film. I think I'm talking about just in terms of the effects, like, especially because some superhero movies or just even some movies with crazy CGI, sometimes the CGI doesn't hold up when you watch it later. Like, no, this one does. So, um, we see Blink. We have Blink. It was cool seeing her, and finally seeing God, I don't know why I forgot his name. Fucking Riptide, not Riptide. Fucking damn it! It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I don't know why my mind went blank, but yeah, it was cool seeing them. So Sunspot, it was kind of cool. Colossus, it was kind of cool seeing Colossus in action. Granted, when you see Colossus in like the Deadpool movies, it is a little bit like, God damn, it's hard. It is kind of hard looking back. Because I think the guy they got to play Colossus, I think it's the same dude who was Colossus in X2 and 3. And he's a good actor. It's just the Colossus in the Deadpool movies is like right out of the comics. He has a Russian accent. His costume's pretty much the costume from the comics too. It's kind of hard to look back. But it was cool seeing Wolverine finally have a decent suit. Unfortunately, you don't see him actually fight in it or anything like that. Unfortunately, yeah, not fucking Riptide. Riptide's fucking G.I. Joe. I don't know why. I can't think of his name right now. My mind just, it'll come to me. Or I'll fucking say it tomorrow. I'm gonna feel like an idiot. But like, yeah, like it was cool seeing. That's one thing I do like about both First Class and this movie is they do show off some of the X Men we never really got to see in some of the movies, like Frost, seeing Havoc. He comes back again in this one, but he's kind of gone immediately. But we do see him a little bit. Um, it's it's a little. I think we see Warpath too, the Native American guy in Sunspot. So we get a little bit of some of the X Men we have not seen in a movie. So I do like that. Unfortunately, it's only in this sequence, and they're gonna die, and so you don't see them again like when they go in the past. But I do like that. And I think the Rogue Cut has this scene where you see not Rogue, Storm and Wolverine have a scene and they kiss. And to be honest, they should have. I've always bothered me why they never leaned into that, because Wolverine and Storm have had a thing in some stories, and it would have made more sense than him and Jean. The way they try to push the whole thing with him and Jean in these movies. Thankfully, I think this one finally kind of drops it a little bit. Granted, yeah, he does somewhat have a thing for when he first sees her, but it should have been him and Storm. I've always felt like they should have leaned into that. I felt like they make way more sense as a couple. I never understood if you're going to have Wolverine pair up with anybody, either her or Mystique. One of those two. They never should have harped on him and Jean. It's one of the few things I'll admit. I like these movies, but that's like my pet peeve in terms of the story. Like, because he's always had a crush on Jean, but it was never to that level. He always knew that she was Scott's. And I've always felt like they try to force it to be yeah, he always did. I'll admit, he did always kind of have a crush on Jean, but it was never anything major. He always knew she loved Scott, so he always backed off. So they should have just leaned it to him and Storm. So it was like watching the scene. It's like they should have just leaned into that. So this is where Professor X goes into the story of what happened. Magneto now reformed, basically working side by side with Charles, which does happen in the comics later down the road in some stories, where he actually does join the X-Men. So they decide to devise a plan to go back into the past and stop Raven from killing Trask. And Professor X can't do the trip because if he goes there, he'd die. Basically, it would kill him. So the only person who's able to go there and survive the trip would be Wolverine. So he agrees to go while basically Kitty can do something with her powers, basically, it essentially can transport him back into the past. It's some form of time travel. Basically a form of time travel. Yeah, so it was finally. So then, yeah, they start attacking the Sentinels, and basically that's when Wolverine gets sent back. And basically, he has to go talk to the professor, and the professor warns him that he was a different person then. He was basically kind of down on himself, at this point. He's basically at his worst point in his life. He almost like because I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when we see Professor X, this would have been a little bit after first class. That his school shut down because of the war, so a lot of his students had to go to the war. He's very down on himself. Obviously with what happened in the end. So he's like an uber alcoholic. He takes this kind of serum that basically can make him walk, but it limits his telekinetic powers. But he's kind of for it because he almost wants to like forget about everything. He stopped using Cerebro. This is a different Professor X. And I thought James McAvoy did a really good job of portraying that. And it was an interesting look at Professor X, because obviously in these movies we always see him as like the wise Professor X, and all of them up until this point. So I'm not against seeing a different version. And in Magneto, obviously he's still a bad guy. He's still he's in prison. So basically they think if you get Professor X and Magneto together, that Raven, who thought, make it seem like, oh, she'll be so amazed seeing them together that may stop her from. So they send him back to the past, and I love this little opening scene when he says he's in bed with some chick. Some dudes show up. They're like, I guess some mobster kind of guys. They show up, and he beats them up. And obviously his claws are bone at this point, because, he wouldn't have had the anium thing yet. So he goes to, this is where he goes to the school, and this is where we see Beast. I actually think Nicholas Hoult does a really good job at Beast. I do wish we did. I don't know if they couldn't get Kelsey Grammer for the future scenes or whatever, but I would have liked to have seen Kelsey Grammer at least one more time as Beast. Because I felt like we've only ever got to see him as Beast once, and I'm not counting his shitty appearance in the Marvels. Not counting that. But like a real appearance in a movie, and I felt like we never really got to see him. So it is a little frustrating that they never did that. So we never got to see him, but it's cool. I think Nicholas Hoult does a good job at playing young Beast, and I loved his little fight with Wolverine because Wolverine just kind of storms in. And this is where we see the Professor, and I love the little callback to the fuck off scene from Days of Future Past. Like you told me, fuck off. When Wolverine tells him the story, he eventually, even like current Professor X says to Wolverine, "You got to be patient with me. I was not the same man." So he eventually convinces the Professor to go. So they try to find some mutant. Oh, and this is where they go into what happened to Eric, who's in prison, like a major prison, because of what happened to. While this is going on, Trask is trying to get his Sentinel program going, and Trask initially, obviously, the politicians kind of turned it down because they, at that point, didn't see mutants as a threat, So, and Mystique, seeing Trask's files and all his experiments on mutants, she decides she wants to kill him. So I'll admit, of the movies, this is probably the best Jennifer Lawrence has played Mystique, because at least in some scenes she actually felt like Mystique, especially that scene when she impersonates the girl to get with the one leader. Like, I'll admit, that was a cool scene. So yeah, it's okay. I'm fucking dumb. I remember now. He's like one of my favorite characters, Bishop. We finally see Bishop in the movie. I know, it just fucking hit me. So yeah, it was cool seeing Bishop in this. Granted, he was kind of a minor role. I remember that actor. He's the one dude who works with Owen in the newer Jurassic World movies. But he was decent as Bishop in this. I would have liked to have seen a scene of him in the past. I don't know if he was maybe he just wasn't old enough in the 70s at that time yet. So maybe, but it would have been cool to see his character, because it was cool seeing him in the beginning, because he's from like the 90s version of the X-Men. But anyway, going back to the scene I was talking about now. But so Mystique gets the information about Trask by posing as the other guy. Then this is a little bit later, so then yeah, this is where the group meets with Quicksilver, and man, I love this Quicksilver. Granted, it would have been nice if they could have still did their own Scarlet Witch. I'm surprised they never did that. But I really like this Quicksilver. I love his dialogue, the way he talks, the way he carries himself, and then obviously the scene when they break into the Pentagon and get Magneto out. One of the best scenes ever. And the fact that this is from 2014 and it looks better than a scene from a 2023 movie is pretty sad. It's, how do you do that, dude? Like, how do you have a newer movie, an older movie? Like, it's not old. Like, 2014 in retrospect doesn't feel that long ago. But that scene is just so good. The effects look good and it ages well. So he breaks them out, and I love the song that's playing over it and the water effect. I love all those little details they put into it. You would think that this scene would have came from like a 2022 movie even. Like you would think this movie came out like this year or last year. But no, it's from a 2014 movie. It is just not even just the Flash, but just compare it to any of the Marvel movies even that came out this year. Like, look how bad. Granted, I didn't see it in theaters. I streamed it, but the Marvels. Sorry, I'm just looking for my paperclip. Never mind. Anyway, look at the Marvels. Look how bad that looked, and you compare it. And that was another one that came out this year, and it looks better, and it looks worse than this scene, which came out 8 years ago. Anyway, so they break Magneto out, and I love anytime Magneto and Professor X have a scene. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender have such great chemistry, man. That's what I mean when. Were they able to perfectly cast them twice? Like, that's crazy to me. They were able to do that shit twice. So, and even the scene where they're finally playing, they talk about Rogue. I keep saying Rogue, Raven. And, they even playing a little bit of chess. Like, then obviously, I even love the little dialogue between Wolverine and Magneto when they're on the plane. Like, I just love Magneto. I just think Michael Fassbender is, to me, of all these movies, he is the VIP. The way, like, I love McAvoy as Professor X, but he is borderline, in my opinion, he's almost as good as fucking Ian McKellen's Magneto. Like, I think he's almost as good. It's close to 50-50 with them. Like, he is so good. He plays it so well. And like I said, even in like the bad ones, he's still really good. So, and I think this one perfectly captures their friendship. And, obviously their relationship is very strained. Magneto's and Professor X's. But I love like those little bits where they do feel like they're still like I said, they have always had, even when they were at odds, they have always had that like mutual respect with each other. So, before the president has this signing, Trask is meeting with like all these world leaders about the Sentinel program, and this is where Mystique kind of gets out of her disguise, fights off a couple of guys, and that's when the group shows up, and they're able to seemingly talk Raven down, but when Wolverine sees Stryker, it like strikes all the memories from the other movie, so his mind goes blank, and this is where his claws come out back in the future, and he accidentally scratches Kitty, but pretty badly. But she's able to stabilize him. While this is going on, Magneto tries to kill Raven because obviously he had heard the story, so he's ensuring the future of mutants, and then this is where She jumps out the window, everyone goes out, and unfortunately, everybody knows what mutants are in front of the world. I do love the camera. Like in the scenes where they jump out and you're seeing the people film. I love that they try to make it look like actual grainy film, like it's actually 1973. I love that little detail. Like they actually, I don't know if a lot of other movies set it like that try to make it set like in a certain time do that. Like just that little detail. They're like, okay, we're in 1973, so we gotta, when we're having people film with their camera, we gotta make it look like uber grainy, like they're actually, because that's what it would look like filming back then. So I love that. Like they put that little detail in, man. Like that, I don't know. That's just, you don't see that a lot. But anyway, so Magneto and Beast have a little bit of a fight. Raven manages to get away. This is where Wolverine manages to kind of get, because Kitty's about able to stabilize him. This is where he kind of gets his mind back, and they all have to get away. And then we used to have a little scene with Magneto and Raven. I do, like I said, as much as I don't really like Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, this is the best she's been as her. And if they had ended it with this movie, she wouldn't be seen as bad. I think it's those last two movies, especially the last one, that really like sour people on her Mystique. Because I think if it was just first, last, in this movie, it wouldn't have been as bad. Because I actually think in this movie, she's pretty good. Like, I gotta be honest, she's actually good as Mystique in this movie. I still won't say she's a great Mystique, but I do think she was good in this movie. I love the scene she had with Magneto. You know, she walks away from him because, you know, Magneto even basically tried to convince her in a way to not kill Trask, but she ends up going off. And then this is the Rogue cut. So the difference is, basically, at this point, Kitty's like health's kind of getting worse because, you know, she got majorly scratched, so she can't go on much longer. And Bobby tries to initially suggest, oh, let's try getting Wolverine back, and he's like, no, if you do it, that would fuck up. Like basically, they explain the little things like, oh, if we try to get Wolverine out, it could cause another issue at the time, and basically make things potentially even worse than they already are. And Professor even emphasizes that they need more time. I love that. It's just, they try to explain the time travel. Just compare this to fucking Endgame, where the time travel is so convoluted. They made it simple as fuck in this movie, and that's why it works. It's one of the few movies, in terms of time travel for superhero stories, this is the best one. I think they handle it the best. They actually explain the lore and the rules about the time travel. It's not just convoluted as fuck, or they think you would understand. It's not even the way Endgame did it. It was just, you don't, I barely can explain to you the time travel in that movie. I don't know if I'll ever review it. I don't know if I'll ever go back with some of the MCU movies, but it's like, at least in this one, they actually explain the time travel. Like, they actually go into the rules of it all. So I really like that. So anyway, so Bobby mentions Rogue, and he mentions that she's actually still alive, that she's alive in the mansion. And the professors, I know a few, like, places they can't find. So Magneto, Professor X, and Rogue, fucking Bobby, sorry, I'm just so flustered, sorry guys. They all travel to the mansion. I love this sequence. While this is going on, you have juxtaposed with Magneto, or, past Magneto, getting his helmet back and his costume. I love, like, he was just, the way he takes out the guards. He's just using the metal balls, like, just fucking throw them at people. Like, he was so fucking good. While this is going on, you see, like, current Magneto getting through the mansion. Yeah, so they eventually find Rogue being experimented on. And you notice the difference, too. Like, this Magneto, he grabs, like, all the, like basically the surgical equipment. And he could kill them with it, but he doesn't. He just basically lets them run away. Like, this Magneto actually has changed. That shows you. So Magneto, while this is going on, the other Magneto gets his helmet back. I love that scene. Like, he fucking has it go through the window, and he just grabs it. I love that shot. That's probably going to be the thumbnail, is that. When he just grabs the helmet and he just to have it in his hand. I love that shot. It's so good. So, but so in this version, Mystique does go back to the mansion for a night and basically basically has sex with Beast. But then she ends up destroying Cerebro, so they can't find her, or the professor can't find her, so they have to figure out what to do next morning. And because the DC, this is where Trask is gonna have his big show off of the Sentinel program because of what happened in, I think it was Paris. I think it was Paris where this happened. He ended up getting the green light to do the Sentinel program. But we actually get the reveal that he was selling the assets potentially, because in the end of this one, he goes to jail for selling intel to other countries. Because that's what that scene was basically. He was willing, because they initially turned him down, he was willing to sell it to foreign nations. But, so Mystique is there. She poses like as an agent, like one of the Secret Service men. Oh, before this, we see Magneto reprogram the Sentinels while they're like on the train. I love that sequence. It's so good. Just like the visuals from that, like it is crazy to me, like how this movie's CGI just holds up so well. This could be a movie that, like, I'm gonna say again, this could have came out like this year or last year. You wouldn't know it. You wouldn't think this is a movie from like 8 years ago. You know, it's crazy to me. So then the next day, Magneto lifts the whole fucking field, like a football field. I love that scene too. Like, just the way they show off Magneto's powers in this movie is pretty good. Like, there's a lot of them. Like, the moment on the train, this scene, even just the little scenes when he's taking out the guards. And I love his suit. I'm always love seeing Magneto in his, because I love it. They go a little bit more kind of comic-y. Like, you know, they give him, like, the purple. Granted, I still think the helmet from the specifically First Class, that helmet I do prefer because it looks like straight out of the comic, especially when it's in purple. But the one he has in this is fine. I don't hate it. It just, obviously it looks a little bit different. So Rogue, at this point, yeah, I should have mentioned, yeah, Bobby dies during the mission, saving Rogue. And they manage to get back to the jet. Rogue takes Kitty's place. So yeah, then this is where the day of the event. And I love the little scene where Wolverine goes through a metal detector and he's just like looking like, why isn't it going off? And I guess he probably forgot for a second. Oh yeah, I'm not adamantium. So he's like surprised it didn't go off. I love that. Love that. Like, I love the humor in these movies too. Like, they do the humor actually right, not like cringy, like kind of what current Marvel does, where it's just cringe joke after joke. Okay, I was just making sure it was filming. But yeah, I love the humor in this. So Magneto arrives, and we see the Sentinels activate, and everybody's freaking out. Like, Trash is like, why I didn't activate? And we see that Magneto has, and basically they start attacking everybody. Kind of becomes a big calamity. And I should have mentioned this scene too, where Professor finally, before they arrive at Washington, D.C., he tries using Cerebro initially and it doesn't work because he hasn't used it in a while. And he's like very down on himself. So this is where the current Professor, like, he kind of looks into Wolverine's eyes, almost like the Professor kind of is actually hypnotizing Wolverine himself in a way. So, and this is where we get that one-on-one between the two professors. I love that scene, dude. It's such an awesome scene. Because they're two great actors, so just the back and forth was so good. So I would have liked one with the Magnetos, but I guess they couldn't. And it would have probably made sense in the movie. But I love the back and forth between the two professors. I love that scene. So I had to mention that. And I like the scenes where then he's able to use Cerebro. And he's actually like, I love, like, this is before they left, like, he's like tracking Raven. And he's like taking control of different people to like try to convince her to not kill Trask. And then he does it again too. I just love it. So Magneto arrives, like I said, it all go, and then Wolverine and Beast start fighting the Sentinels. Wolverine tries charging Magneto, and Magneto locks him in rebar and then throws him. So kind of Wolverine's pretty much gone from the movie in terms of that. Like at least the third act, anyway, he's kind of gone from. So Mystique tries to kill Trask because Trask he has like this thing that can sense mutants. Because it went off earlier, and that's how she was found, and she was found again. But then Magneto finds the president's secret room, and I actually think the actor they got for Nixon did a pretty good job. Like he kind of looks like Nick, and I love how Magneto just pulls out the whole security thing out of the fucking White House. It was crazy. So, and then so at this point the professor's kind of under some pillars. And while Magneto goes on and he gives a speech about like this, Michael Fassbender is so good, man. The way he delivered those lines, like, and you have like some of the mutants watching on the TV siding with him. It was so good, and basically kind of like a big mass call to like for like the Brotherhood essentially. And then while this goes on, Mystique takes a shot at Magneto with like the trank thing, and then and then tries to shoot Trask. But then the professor basically finally tells her, like, it's your choice now. I've been trying to control you. I love the back and forth between the two. So she decides not to do it. While this is going on, in the future, the Sentinels attack the base, start basically killing everybody. It was cool seeing Bishop, but it did kind of suck that we had to see him die, though. But it was cool seeing him at least in a movie. And before when the Sentinels break into the room, and before they're about to attack, it all ends because Rogue puts the gun down. So the Sentinel program is canceled, and Trask ends up getting arrested. And Professor X kind of wills Magneto to, obviously get him out of the pillars, and then he lets Eric go, so along with Mystique, and then Wolverine gets back to his time. He wakes up in 2023, and basically everything's back to normal. The school's active, and they do mention that, like, when you get back, you're the only one who's gonna remember what happened. So he pretty much was. No one, it was like when he sees Jean again. Obviously, he goes to kiss her because at that point, but because he thinks Scott's still dead, and then Scott shows up, and this is where he talks to the professor. So the professor's probably the only other one that remembers. Because I think it would have been that version of the professor that, he helped from the past. Like, the time travel in this is so easy to follow. That's what I love. If you're going to do a time travel, you got to make the time travel easy to fucking follow. And then we see Stryker find Wolverine in the past, but that wasn't Stryker, it was Mystique. And yeah, that's how the movie ends. I love Days of Future. It's just so good, man. The way they blend the current generation and the past generation of the X-Men is so good. And I just think it's a perfect ending. To me, it is the canon ending to me. There's no Apocalypse and the Dark Phoenix do not count. It's just this one. To me, this is such a perfect ending. Like, it works. Like, like the way, like I said, that ending. The disaster was averted. Jean's alive. Cyclops is alive, and the X-Men live on. I'm fine with that being the ending. And I love the score of this movie. The way they're able to do the time travel story is perfect. And I actually think they did a pretty good job at adapting Days of Future Past from the comic. Like I said, the only real negative is I don't like the look of the Sentinels from the future, but I understand what they were kind of going for. Granted, the ones we do see in the past look cool. Like, they look like similar to the one, not like one-to-one, but they do look similar to the ones we get in the comics. So, it was cool seeing characters like Blink, Sunspot. I think we see Rampage. Not Rampage, Warpath, who's the Native American one. We definitely see Bishop. That was cool seeing him in a movie. I've always found him cool. We just never got to see him in a movie. And I love the scenes in the past and the future. I think they do a good job at going back and forth for the most part. The Rogue cut is the one I watch because I think it blends perfect with how they bring Rogue in, and I think this is the best Anna Paquin has played the character. Like of all the movie, even though she doesn't do a lot in terms of she's only there basically to take Kitty's role. She doesn't she's not involved in the actual story in terms of like when they go in the past or anything like that, or even at the start of the movie. But it was cool seeing her regardless. So I love this movie. I think it's perfect. This is my canon ending. I'm gonna still review Apocalypse, which I think Apocalypse has one cool scene. That scene when Wolverine breaks out, and it was like, okay, maybe this could be a blueprint for an R-rated Wolverine movie, and that's probably how Logan got made. But aside from that, they waste Apocalypse, especially in the day and age. Like when you see Darkseid and Thanos in film, and they look like right out of the comics, and then the Apocalypse in this looks fucking terrible. And Oscar Isaac's not a bad actor for the role. It's just they made him look terrible. I don't know what they were going for with that. When you saw Thanos in 2014, or even like the end of the first Avengers, but 2014 is when we actually get like a full on look at him. He looks right out of the comic. Same with Darkseid in Snyder's Justice League. It's like, you telling me they can do those two characters like right out of the comic, but we can't do that with Apocalypse. He looks badass in the comics, and what we get is just a lot of people use the Ivan Ooze joke at the time, and my God, I can't unsee it. I don't know what they were going for with his design in the movie. It was weird. I don't know if it's like this was one where they didn't want to go CGI, where they didn't want to. It's like some characters you have to do CGI with. I think Hulk is one of them. Hulk, characters like Darkseid and Thanos, you have to do. The same with Apocalypse, you have to do CGI. They're these big Titan kind of characters. You can't do that practical. Like, as much as I love practical effects, characters like that aren't going to look great. I think that's what they're going for with Apocalypse, but it just did not work. You had to go CGI with them. You could have did some good CGI. I mean, Thanos looks good in Infinity War, and as much as I don't like the movie, but in Endgame, in terms of just CGI, he looked good. Darkseid looked great in Justice League. So it's like characters like that, you have to do CGI. You can't do practical. Anyway, I'll be reviewing that next, either Tuesday or Friday. I don't know when. It'll probably be Friday though, because I don't think anything's coming out next Friday. So it'll probably be next Friday. But anyway, like I said, maybe tonight I'll review I'm gonna try, but if not, then it'll be Friday. I'll do the Prowler. But aside from that, so I'll either see y'all tonight or I'll see y'all again tomorrow. All right, y'all. Peace. Days of Future Past, 9.5 out of 10. It's a really good fucking movie. All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later. Peace.